Would it make you the jerk for refusing to thank my boyfriend after he booked a hotel for me? We'll get into that in a bit, but first, am I the jerk for refusing to talk to my in-laws about my infertility? My husband and I have been trying to conceive for over 2 years, which comes with its only struggles. Recently, my mother-in-law is making comments about, quote, just wanting a grandbaby already, or are you even really trying? These comments are becoming more often than when we first started trying. I've asked her to stop with the hurtful comments. My husband has asked her to stop, and she keeps making comments whenever we bring up the next step on the infertility journey. For example, we have an appointment on Friday to plan out our IVF journey. She responded, I think you guys just need to get drunk and boom, baby. Am I the jerk for not feeling comfortable talking about the infertility with her? She's still coming to Thanksgiving, and I still talk to her when around. I just don't want to keep updating her on this journey when she just makes me feel like crap. Russian Cat 26 commented, in TA, the first time they said this, I wish you had the confidence to loudly stand up and tell them to stop asking him about your hooked up life. You now have an opportunity to do that every single time they bring it up. Embarrass them. Anytime they bring it up. In laws' names, why do you keep asking about what we do in the bedroom? Why do you care about our hooked up life so much? How inappropriate to ask about our hooked up life. Who raised you? Any parent who's that deeply concerned with what their adult children are doing in the bedroom is actually a sicko. Don't make this about your struggles with conceiving, because that's yours to deal with privately. Just make it so effing awkward for them to ever ask again. Valuable Release 868 responded saying, I absolutely agree. People like MIL have their heads so far up their own arse that they have forgotten what appropriate behavior is. Make it awkward. Tell her you guys are fighting over what position to use to get the desired gender. Ask her what position did she and FIL use to conceive DA, and look her right in the eye as seriously as you can when you do it. Tell her you're working your way through the Kama Sutra and you're only up to the reverse cowgirl. Fertility is not at maximum until you reach the side saddle. Be outrageous, make it awkward. Be serious and look her in the eye. Stare at her so she's uncomfortable. Also, hi, my name is Brendan, and if you guys enjoy these Am I the Jerk videos, it would be awesome if you left a like or left a review if you're listening to our podcast. That said, our next story is, am I the jerk for taking my son for surgery and never telling his mom? My ex and I have 4 boys. We are opposites. I'm very reserved, whereas she's someone who broadcasts her business on social media. I've gotten into fights with her over putting me on her social media accounts even after we divorced. As our kids got older, they asked her not to put them all over too. They didn't want their personal business out there. When my third boy, Jackson, was about 11, he told me he was having issues going to the bathroom. He was adamant that I did not tell his mom. I took him to the doctor, and long story short, it was recommended that he get a circumcision. My son was horrified, not because of the surgery as much as his mom finding out and telling people. I told him that as of now, no one knows about this but you, me, and the doctor. We can keep it this way as long as you don't tell anyone. You can have the procedure done on a Thursday and I'll tell your mom that you're sick. By the time you go back to her house, you should be healed up. So that's what we did. It wasn't a big procedure. He was awake the whole time and healed quickly. I was surprised. My other kids were clueless. I almost forgot about it. Jackson is now 14. I guess his mom found out when she got a hold of his medical records to send to a new doctor. She asked Jackson and he said it's not her business. She called me and I said I'm not saying anything without talking to Jackson, but I'll say this. Our kids have expressed several times that you embarrassed them on social media by oversharing about them and ignored their request to stop. So absolutely, I would keep something like our son having a circumcision a secret from you because me and your son believe you'd post about it. The problem is you, not us. She's furious, and I said I don't give a freak about you. I'm not married to you. Pretty much, our kids can stay where they choose, so you're going to end up by yourself if you don't drop this. Jackson doesn't want you to know about it because you'll tell everyone and you're exactly proving him right. Edit. Our agreement says we don't need the other parent's permission to get a medical procedure if it's deemed necessary or an emergency. My son's circumcision was medically necessary, not cosmetic. Getting a circumcision isn't the same as getting braces, so no, I didn't violate our agreement. But even if I needed her permission, I still would have gotten it done for my son and not told her. I'm not afraid of her. Our oldest kids pretty much have final say which parent they stay with. The oldest 3 are high schoolers, the youngest is 10, and he's with me 5 days a week. Miss Judge and Jury commented, "NTA, I would almost never agree with withholding this from another parent. However, I'm worried that child will not have a safe parent to talk to when needed. This is a minor procedure. Obviously, you were able to care for him and ensure he was okay. Her young teen has a better concept of boundaries than her. She did this to herself, and if she can't reflect on how her oversharing makes her son feel, that's on her, and he will continue to withhold info from her. Sad when the internet is your priority over your children. Be the safe space at these tender years. Props, Dad, for listening to your child. One of you needs to. My only suggestion is to frame it calmly in a manner that she can understand how her actions make him feel and why he asked you not to share, out of fear, on her if she's receptive or not." Our next story is, am I the jerk for ruining my brother's childhood memory by admitting I photoshopped it 14 years ago? When my younger brother, 20 now, was 6, he went through a huge Harry Potter phase. He loved the wizarding world and believed he might meet Harry Potter, Daniel Radcliffe, or the other characters on a family trip to Scotland since Hogwarts was there. No one promised this, but he convinced himself it could happen. Sadly, the trip was cancelled after our grandpa passed away, and my brother was devastated for both reasons. To cheer him up, I decided to craft a souvenir. I was 16 and had just discovered Photoshop, so I edited a picture of my brother with Daniel Radcliffe to make it look like they'd met. I printed it, framed it, and gave it to him without telling him it was fake. He loved it and fully believed he'd met Daniel. Soon, he had an entire story about the meeting, what they talked about, how Daniel hugged him, etc. It was so sweet, and none of us, my family and I, had the heart to tell him the truth. Fast forward 14 years, and my brother still didn't know that the old, low-quality picture of him meeting Daniel Radcliffe is fake. I never told him because his memory of the fake meeting felt so real to him that it became one of his proudest stories. Over time, the memory became less important, and the framed picture had been packed away in some box, and my brother has long outgrown his Harry Potter obsession. Yesterday, however, we were at our parents' home and we were bringing up old memories. You know how it goes. The story of meeting Daniel Radcliffe came up, and thinking it was harmless, I told him the truth. I thought he'd laugh, but instead he got visibly upset. He didn't want to believe me at first, thinking I was messing with him. I told him the real story of how and why I did it. He told me that it feels like I robbed him of a real childhood memory that he really cherished, and he feels embarrassed thinking about all the times he's told people about meeting Daniel Radcliffe in person, even recently. We ended our conversation on a semi-good note though. I apologized for not telling him sooner, because I do feel bad that it meant so much to him, even now, but I don't regret it. Back then, it made him so happy during a rough time, and I don't regret giving him that joy. I just didn't realize how much it still meant to him. So I'm just wondering, am or was I the jerk? Miss Judge and Jury commented, "NTA, it's like Santa. You did it with good intentions and he never met him. He was 6, now he's 20. Maybe disappointing, but he's 20 years old. It would be worse to continue the fantasy for an adult. I'm sure no one ever thought at the time this would be the result 14 years later. Sounds like he just never got the memo it wasn't real. Much worse things that can happen as an adult." Swordfish Past 8963 responded saying, "This comment nailed it. While it's a bummer he feels embarrassed, you had nothing but the sweetest intentions and definitely thought this would be a few-year-long phase. Not something he held onto for life. Don't sweat it. Soon he'll have better small talk to make with the people he told about meeting Daniel, when he's able to laugh about this." Our next story is, am I the jerk for going home early from work with permission and being upset about my husband's best friend's comments? For context, my husband's best friend, let's call him Jake, lives with us. He pays a small amount in rent, about a fourth of what it's worth, helps out by watering my plants, I pay for all the supplies, and feeding my cat. I buy the food. My cat just likes hanging out in the upstairs area where Jake lives. Jake also works with my husband, and I recently started working there as well. Recently, I got sick and was sent home from work for a week. After a few days, I was feeling well enough to head into the office briefly to sort out some work and then head back home to rest. This was cleared with my boss beforehand. When I was getting ready to leave, I went to say goodbye to my husband. Jake was there too and made a snarky comment along the lines of, "You must understand how this looks to everyone that works here, and if you're sick, you should stay home and not come in." This really rubbed me the wrong way. Jake isn't in any kind of authority over my position, and this isn't the first time he's made comments when I've been allowed to leave work early due to personal circumstances. I feel like it's overstepping, especially since my boss had no issue with me coming in briefly. Now I'm wondering, am I the jerk for going home early with permission, or for being upset about Jake's comments? Current name 1334 commented, "NTA, he should have kept that to himself. It was rude, but just try to understand his side. Are you working in the same department? Is he being affected by you being off with a workload increase? Does he hate his job and is he jealous you're off and he's not? Is what you have contagious and he's worried about getting sick and missing work himself? None of these really matter. What he said is still rude. I'm just wondering if it's coming from somewhere." Broken Unicorn Candy responded saying, "We work in different departments. I'm an admin, he's in sales. So he isn't affected by the workload. I have pneumonia, so it's not contagious. He always complains about me being able to leave earlier than him. I leave at 3 some days because I have to fetch my children from school. He's a single man with no children, so no personal responsibility to fetch children." Our next story is, am I the jerk for telling my son's former stepdad not to steal my moments? My baby mama married Jim when my son was 4. He had 2 older boys who were 9 and 11. They got divorced when my son was 9. My ex and I were 100% supportive of Jim staying in Tyler's life, plus free babysitting. I told Jim that he already had his kids to raise with all the challenges, and I want to be the one to guide him, especially when puberty hits. He said he understood. Tyler is now 10. I have him most of the time because his mom travels for work. If I have to go to the office, then Jim is happy picking Tyler up. Jim's traveling back to Idaho with his sons and asked if he could have Tyler for the weekend. Last weekend, as Jim was going to be gone for 2 weeks. Plus, he wanted to give Tyler an early Xmas present since Tyler will be spending Xmas with me in another state. I picked Tyler up on Sunday morning and he slept all day. I woke him up and told him to go take a shower and we'll have dinner. He asked if he could sleep in my bed, so I said okay. Go use my shower and we'll have dinner in bed. I could see him in my bathroom and he put on deodorant. I asked him where he got it, and he said Jim. I asked why Jim bought him deodorant, and Tyler said because he said I needed it. I understand boys need deodorant, but I didn't think my son needed it yet. I spoke to Jim today and asked if he told Ty that he needed deodorant. He laughed and said yes, and it was true. Ty was on his lap watching YouTube videos and said Ty smelled like armpits. He also said he gave Ty the puberty talk, and Ty asked a lot of questions and laughed when he told him about little hairs that he had. I said, "Oh, so you had that talk with your boys?" He said, "Yes." I said you should have told me that you think he needed deodorant, and I would have had the talk with him. He said he was sorry and didn't think it was a big deal. I said, "Ty is my only kid. I let him spend time with you, not to replace me as his dad. I wouldn't have done what you done." He said I was overreacting, and I said I think you're spending too much time with Ty. You raised your boys, so let me raise mine. You don't have any obligation to Ty. I do. He asked me if I didn't trust him. I said if I didn't trust you, then I wouldn't have let him spend the weekend with you. So now I'm considering reducing time spent between the two. I feel like Jim is getting too comfortable. WFH Champ commented, "YTA, your child has a noticeable body odor. You have primary custody and haven't even had preliminary discussions about puberty. You don't notice he stinks or are ignoring it. Ex-stepdad fills in because you haven't done the necessary as a parent, and now you're butthurt because you didn't say anything first? If you aren't the one talking to your kid about this, it's a you issue. Get to know your child better. Stop blaming the adult in their life that they trust and be better to become that adult. I have 2 teens, girls, not boys, but similar and also get to deal with BO. I've also had to talk with numerous girlfriends about period and deodorant hygiene because so many parents avoid these discussions. I have extra stock for these girls to take home. They ask me all sorts of questions because they need an adult who will give them answers. It's not hard to be that person. Our next story is, am I the jerk for not inviting my coworker to a party because I find them exhausting to be around? I recently hosted a small party at my place for a few close friends and coworkers. I invited people I genuinely enjoy spending time with, and I kept it small because I wanted it to feel relaxed and fun. One coworker, though, noticed they weren't invited and brought it up at work the following week. The truth is, this coworker is exhausting to be around. They dominate conversations, overshare, and don't pick up on social cues when others are trying to steer the conversation away. I just didn't want the vibe of the party to shift because of their energy. I didn't say that. Of course, I told them it was just a small gathering with people I'd been friends with for a while. They didn't take it well and said it was hurtful that I didn't include them. Now I'm wondering if I should have just invited them to avoid the awkwardness at work, even though it would have made the party less enjoyable for me. Am I the jerk for not inviting them? Garlic Parm Bread Thought commented, unless you invited everyone from your workplace except the one person, NTA. It'd be kind of rude to exclude just the one person, but if they weren't the only person from the workspace not invited, then no. It's your gathering, not a work event, so you're under no obligation to invite them or work around their feelings. Our next story is, am I the jerk for calling my husband self-centered for controlling the family room TV? My husband likes to sit in our family room and watch football, sports shows, etc. We have an open floor plan home where the kitchen and family room are merged, and our large screen TV is in the central hub of the house on the first floor. My husband spent most of the weekend watching games while I was out and about with our house guest. About 9 p.m. Sunday night, I found myself alone in the family room and sat down to watch a show after clearing dishes, etc. Apparently, my husband had gone upstairs to take a shower. Upon returning to the family room, he asked if I was kicking him out. I said no, I was just watching TV. He said he'd go to our bedroom to watch his show. I detected a bit of irritation in his voice, but I ignored it. This morning, I came downstairs to make breakfast. My husband was leaving to run an errand. While I went upstairs, he told our guests not to turn off the TV or change the channel because he was watching a show and wanted to rewind what he missed while out. So our guest and I didn't touch the TV while drinking our coffee and having breakfast. When my husband returned an hour later, I mentioned privately that I didn't change the channel, but I thought it was a bit much of him to ask that we not, considering he wasn't even home to use the TV, and it's an ESPN show which will obviously run again today. He got angry and said I was trying to make him feel like a jerk, that it wasn't a big request. I pointed out that it's a shared living space, that he tends to commandeer it, and he'd used it all weekend without interruption as I was gone and our DD was on her tablet or in our room. It felt a bit unfair. I told him that it seemed self-centered and a bit entitled. I truly attempted to give my perspective without being hostile, but he still got mad even though I had complied with his request and hadn't changed the channel. Am I the jerk? Reasons why I could be the jerk. There is a TV in our bedroom and guest room. Our house guest and or I could have gone to those areas to drink our coffee and watch a bit of morning news before work. I may be childish for arguing over a TV at all. Talos2 commented, NTA, there's actually a really great article about women hating open concept homes because it means they have to just watch their useless husbands sit on their butts all day. I wish I could find the article, but oh well. Yeah, it seems like your husband thinks he's the captain of the living room media center, but is really just being low-key rude and annoying. Our next story is, am I the jerk for not showing up to my friend at the hospital because I needed to babysit? I, 18-year-old male, was tasked by my mom and dad to babysit my little sister, 13-year-old female, for a couple hours because they wanted to go to a restaurant together. After they left, everything was going fine until one of my friends called me and said that one of my other friends got seriously injured and got sent to the hospital. He said that me, him, and some other friends should go visit him for emotional support. I told him I couldn't because I needed to babysit my sister and I didn't want to leave my sister alone, especially not for long periods of time. My friends told me that I was being really ridiculous and immature. They thought my sister was old enough to be able to stay at home by herself anyway. I still didn't want to leave her alone though, so I decided that I would stay home because if my parents found out that I'd left my sister alone, they'd be furious. Now my friends are disappointed in me and saying that I care more about my mom and dad not getting mad at me than my friend's health and that I didn't care about our friendship. From now on, the friend that was in the hospital definitely doesn't look at me the way he used to anymore because of what I did. Am I the jerk? Comfortable C2454 commented, NTA. My friends told me that I was being really ridiculous and immature. They thought my sister was old enough to be able to stay home by herself anyway. I still don't want to leave her alone though, so I still decided that I would stay home because if my parents found out that I left my sister alone, they'd be furious. Not their family, not their choice. Although you are an adult, you agreed to watch your sister and that's what you did. Now my friends are disappointed in me and saying that I care more about my mom and dad not getting mad at me than my friend's health and that I didn't care about our friendship. From now on, the friend that was in the hospital definitely doesn't look at me the way they used to anymore because of what I did. Your friend can get over it. You had an agreed to responsibility and you followed through. Our next story is, am I the jerk for revealing a family secret to my husband about his father? My husband's father died of a heart attack at age 42 on the plane while flying to his home country to visit family. My husband, Joe, was 13 and his sister was 9 at the time. His mother had few skills and poor English. From that moment on, Joe worked to support the family after school and at grueling factory shifts after finishing high school. He eventually pursued a trade and built a good life. We raised 2 children and are financially secure. In the 40 years I've known them, Joe, his sister, and their mother, now deceased, idolized their father and spoke wistfully about how much better their lives would have been had he lived. This summer, Joe's mother's cousin visited from the home country and was visibly surprised to see his parents' wedding portrait in a prominent place in our home. At a private lunch, she asked if they had forgiven the father. At my blank stare, she was incredulous that they didn't know. Her mother was their mother's older sister, and she stayed for months to pick up the pieces after the tragedy. She arranged the funeral, dealt with the finances, and discovered that the father was flying to meet another woman, who he had met in Canada, to start a new life. He had most of their savings on him in cash. He was apparently abandoning his family. She kept this information from her sister to spare her the added heartbreak and to protect the children. Whether she ever told her sister the truth is unknown, but my husband and his sister certainly never knew. We agreed that I should not tell my husband. When he boasted about what a wonderful man his father was, I bit my tongue. I finally caved when Joe recently was speculating on how rich we could have been, owning property that his father would have eventually bought. I told him what his cousin said and how his father was perceived by the relatives who knew. Joe was calm and flatly denied everything. He admitted that he had met the other woman at his father's restaurant where his father introduced her as a friend. Whether or not it was an affair was none of his business, Joe maintains. I won't tell his sister, as she's emotionally fragile and still references losing her father at age 9 as an excuse for her life choices. Financial problems, an unstable partner, etc. The sad reality is that things likely would have been worse if he had lived. As it now stands, Joe and I agree to disagree. Cheating irks me, but family abandonment is unforgivable. My mother-in-law was a kind, loving person. I no longer want the fairy tale wedding portrait dominating our home. It's built on lies. Am I the jerk for telling my husband? OK Status 9627 commented, Info, what was going through your head when you told H? It seems to me, from the moment you were told by the cousin, you were in a no-win situation. You were stuck either concealing this from your husband, which he could have picked up on, and then wondered what secret you were keeping from him and what else you'd hidden, or you were disappointing him with the truth about someone who he'd idealized. However, when you found out this information from the cousin, you thought about it and concluded it was better to keep it a secret. So, what was your motivation in the heat of the moment? Were you wanting to put a stop to your husband's fantasy about what could have been? Were you wanting to bring your husband's father down a few pegs in his eyes? Or had you just had enough holding your tongue? Our next story is, am I the jerk for lying to my wife? My wife, 28-year-old female, works in finance, and recently we went to her company event where I got to meet her colleagues for the first time. During the event, she introduced me to some of her male colleagues, and somehow it ended up with me and 3 guys having small talk while she left to talk to others. Eventually, they asked me what I do for work. I work as a dentist, but I really dislike talking about work outside of work, so I told them it was nothing interesting. And the convo was moving forward, but one of the guys kept on asking and was so curious for God knows why, and jokingly said, "Are you embarrassed because you work at McDonald's?" He was starting to annoy me, so I said in a dead serious tone that I do in fact work at McDonald's, and that's why I didn't want to talk about it, and tried to make it as awkward as possible. I thought it was hilarious, seeing his "oh, sorry bro" face, while the other 2 tried not to laugh. But, like a week later, I kinda forgot about it, and my wife came home and started yelling at me about why I lied to her colleagues. Apparently, rumors spread fast in her workplace, and eventually the whole office was judging my wife behind her back until she eventually found out. I honestly do get why she was ticked, and it was a back and forth for a while, until eventually she said, what if she came into the clinic I work at and told everyone she was a prostitute? I thought about it, and I kinda see her point. But at the same time, I feel like she's just easily embarrassed and was just angry in the moment for getting judged by the office. However, she thinks I was childish and immature and did not need to do that. Kasparian commented, With a profile badge for the achievement of top 1% commenter, you could have easily said I'm a dentist, but I prefer not discussing business off the clock. There's no reason to hide your profession, and there's certainly no reason to lie about it. No matter how douchey her colleagues were being, your behavior reflects on your spouse. You started this by being cagey about a benign question. With that being said, that's all the time we have for today. If you enjoyed today's video, drop a like and comment below, and if you want to check out our other videos, click the video on the right. With that being said, I'll see you all next time.